Oops, we did it again. We have a 2-part episode again, my friend.
At this point, what isn't a 2-parter? We just have a lot to say with our guests. Let's just be real.
Well, and I don't know. I guess we've just had really great guests. So 2 parts is, I feel, especially like with Dave and Krista, we could probably do like 3 or 4 parts, but that, I don't know about you guys, listeners, but that would drive me bonkers. I can do a 2-part episode. I can't do like multi-part episodes. That would drive me bonkers.
Yeah,
That's why I don't like the fictional podcasts. I think that's why they bother me, because I'm like, no, I want it all right now.
Well, and I like the storytelling of fictional podcasts, how it builds on it. And these 2-parters, it's kind of, I've listened or tried to listen to podcast episodes that are over 2 hours, and I can't do that. I have to naturally take a break. And then if I do it on my own, when I come back to it, I'm always like, now, where did I leave off? What's going on? So
Yeah.
I like it that we kind of, maybe do it a little bit intentionally, but
the conversation, I had this conversation with Hanny the other day, and she was annoyed because I had this conversation with my daughter the other day, and she was annoyed.
Her social security number is 5661.
Oh my God. So I had this conversation with my daughter the other day where she was annoyed because she had to wait for the next season to come out. And I was like, oh, honey, Grey's Anatomy was 1 week at a time. Every single time, 1 week, and you got 1 hour, and then you had to wait. So imagine the episode where you're like watching Derek die. Sorry, spoiler alert, if you have not watched Grey's Anatomy and you hope to, Derek dies. If you don't know that by now.
I stopped watching 10 years ago, so.
I was going to say, it was a long time ago, and if this is the first spoiler you're hearing, it's probably, that's not my fault. That's not on me. But anyway, that was awful. Like those like cliffhangers, and the season cliffhangers were even worse because it wasn't like waiting a month or 2. It was like waiting forever for the season to come back. So
the thing that surprises me about Grey's Anatomy is I just saw that they just celebrated their 21st season. I mean, really?
I think.
I thought it was just said 21st.
No,
regardless. Is it show? I mean, we're talking like
literally. I think they started the year my kids were born, and I didn't even know them yet. Like,
I don't know. I just think that's a long time. Like, that's Simpsons level, right? Like, come on, 2 decades.
You know what, though? If you think about, like, Madonna reinvented herself, and Grey's Anatomy has done the same thing. They just evolve over time, so it stays relevant. I think this might be the last season, though. I have been thinking that for the last 6 years, so we'll see. But it might be the last season.
No.
I don't know what I will do with my time anymore, except go back and watch the reruns.
Oh, heavens. Okay, let's get the train back on the tracks. Is there a Mythbuster that we'd like to talk about?
There is a Mythbuster that we'd like to talk about for the second part of this conversation, navigating the complexities of anger.
I thought maybe if it has to do with Grey's Anatomy, I'm out.
Grey's Anatomy, is it fiction, and does it change your life? Yes or no?
Yes and no.
Oh my goodness. No, the Mythbuster. Here we go. Feelings aren't facts, so they don't really matter. Truth or not?
Yeah, that's true. All right. That was pretty easy.
Hey, moving on. You're so terrible today.
No, feelings aren't facts. I agree with that. Do they matter? I'm going to say yes, they matter, but I don't think they shouldn't have as much importance in conversations that I think some people put them in. I just recently had a conversation at work where it was very feelings forward, I'll say. And, facts kind of mattered in that conversation more than how the person was feeling about the situation. I'm being intentionally vague because I don't know who's listening and I don't want to be that guy, but I'm just saying, I've had a really recent real world example where I've lived that, and I can say, Yeah, feelings aren't facts, and they shouldn't be the most important thing. They can have some relevance and some importance, but they shouldn't be the most important thing.
I feel like that's growth all in one sentence right there, my friend. Can you guess what my response is going to be?
Empathy.
No. Well, I mean, yeah, probably. No, I think this is another one of those sometimes and sometimes not. Do you know what I mean? Like, feelings aren't facts. That is true. But the fact that we're having a feeling is important. And I I think that we would probably all be a little healthier if we could stop and acknowledge those things more often rather than just shoving it down and moving through it or past it or around it or avoiding it altogether. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's some middle ground there is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think in absolutes, I agree with you. I do think, and this is just me being a little bit snarky, but I do think there's a little bit of sometimes a healthy response to feelings is not broadcasting them to everybody, right? Like not every feeling that you have should you let everybody know about. Um, and I would call that the extreme version, right? Like
Mhm.
you shouldn't you shouldn't never talk about your feelings, but you also shouldn't just blast your feelings out to everybody either. That middle of the road to me is the healthy response. So sometimes it is healthy to express yourself and what you're feeling, and other times it's relevant and probably warranted for you to just keep quiet and stuff them down deep, real deep.
No, that's
Yep.
I mean, for the moment, I often employ the box, right? Like I have if I need to put them away, I put them away in my imaginary little box. And then when it's an appropriate time, I can take those feelings back out and think about it and process it and reflect on it and do all the work that needs to happen with that feeling. I also think that there are people who do probably have a harder time not blasting them out all over the place. And that, yeah, that can be problematic in like the wrong situation. But if you know someone who isn't like that and they're expressing feelings, it's probably a big one that might deserve some response from us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, an expansion pack that I'm sure you'll probably disagree with, but maybe not. Maybe you'll surprise me. An expansion pack to this would be not
I'm sorry,
all
I'm giggling about expansion.
right. Not every feeling you have does somebody need to care about, right? Like you could have feelings about a lot of different things, but guess what? Not everybody is going to care or needs to care about them.
No, no. But to be a good human, I feel like for me, it's good if I see someone who is pretty stoic or doesn't. I'm going to respond to someone who typically doesn't display those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I want to be a good human. If you don't, that's up to you. Totally kidding.
Right. Let's go back to Jamie's box analogy. That
I was
was
gonna say,
riveting.
how's that for expansion pack, my friend?
Yeah. I see a lot of growth in you. You know what, Jamie? I want to say thank you for demonstrating exactly what I was thinking. I appreciate it.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome to the gutter, my friend. It's comfy down here, isn't
I
it?
was gonna say, that's bad. That's bad. I
Everyone,
have feelings about that.
I would like you to meet Jamie from my childhood. Welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
I did say I was kidding. My gosh.
That's what makes it
You're like,
funny.
oh, there's the real you. Thanks for coming out to play
Right.
today,
If
Sophie.
anybody was wondering, the first 3 seasons, Jamie was playing peekaboo. We now see her today.
Oh, we are so a little punchy today. It's great.
We are. We are. It's
It's
probably
great.
because we've recorded like 16 episodes today. Kidding.
Right. We are dedicated
Not really.
podcasters. So just wait. What's coming is going to be pretty awesome too. So,
It is pretty awesome.
okay, I was totally kidding. If you want to grow as a human, if you don't, it's fine. I think you're a good human the way you are. You are enough, my friend. I will just personally give you self affirmations today.
You know what? Live, we've never done this before, but live for us on the podcast. Here's a thought, Jamie. What about, I don't know. I'm sure I'm using the wrong words as now I'm catching myself off guard, but when you have to affirm somebody who doesn't need to be affirmed, right? Like that just kind of crept in my mind. Have you ever gave someone affirmations when they didn't really need them or want them?
Yes. Do you know how dashing to my soul that has been? Like, no, I'm good and secure, thank you. I'm good. Really, it's okay. I'm fine. And I'm like, really? Because
Let me
you're
affirm
awesome.
you. You're
No, yeah,
amazing.
yeah, I've done that. And
Oh,
most of the time, it's probably selfishly. I really am the one that needs it. So
I
from
think that's
you,
I think that's where the birth of the compliment sandwich came from, which I just am absolutely appalled by. I can't stand a compliment sandwich. Just get away from me.
wait, compliment sandwich, as in like, here's something great you do, here's something you suck
But you
at,
need
and
to
here's something
change.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, just tell me what I need to change. I don't need to be like, hey, as they're brushing my hair, you're really pretty.
You know what? Use all the HR techniques you want on me. That helps me accept bad, like, criticism. It really does. Like, okay, tell me, okay, I'm prepped. This is what I need to work on. Okay, that hurts. It dashes my soul.
See,
But you still like me. Okay, we're good.
I like starting mine with, I could tell you were really trying, but here's where you failed.
Oh, Malin.
Or,
And then how do you
or
end that?
what do you mean? How do I end? You tell
I
them what
can
they did
tell you were
wrong, and
really
then you walk away.
trying
No,
and you
no,
failed. And then where's the
no,
other half of the sandwich?
no. There's no sandwich.
No,
No, no.
open face sandwiches aren't the same.
How else are you gonna rub it? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God. This is so like, if you ever wanted to experience the after call, you are experiencing it right now.
Welcome to the after call, as the intro for part 2 of how to manage your anger.
And we are going to go back to being healthy, developing human beings in our episode with part 2.
Which everybody knows now is all because of Dr. Krista, not because of us.
Well, I tried.
Oh, when the
So
real Jamie
if
gets
you're
back,
going
we'll
to,
talk.
I was going to say, if you're going to tell me how I failed, just please sandwich it with something you like about me. That's all I need. That's all I
That's so
need.
funny. That's so funny.
We hope you enjoyed part 1. If you have not listened to part 1, please go back. And it was the last episode we released, the first part of the second Thursday of October. And now we are in the fourth Thursday of October. And here's part 2.
It's
It's
just
good.
as good as the first part, we promise.
I think it's better. Personally,
It's
I
all
don't
good.
know. It just builds. It's so good. So,
Okay,
um,
all kidding aside, though, it really did answer a lot of my questions. And I really, we went there and I was just like, oh, that's kind of good. That's kind of good information. So I hope other people find use in it as well as we did.
it's reflective, which is important when you're talking about feelings. Back from whence we came. We're just going to recycle back to the beginning. We'll redo this whole thing. No, I'm just kidding. This is what it is today.
This is it, people. This is what you get. It's the real. It's the real.
Oh, it's good. It's good. So, anyway, we hope you enjoy this episode. It was a lot of fun to record, and we will catch you next time. Oh, well, we'll say that at the end. So, enjoy the episode.
Good luck, everyone.
One thing I'm curious, and I'd love to talk a little bit about is, you kind of talked about like gratitude journaling. And I have found that helpful too, because what I focus on is what grows, right? Like what I feed grows. I've always believed that the more energy I pour into something, the bigger, the bigger and healthier that's going to get, if it's something healthy. But I wanted to talk about, Malin and I kind of touched on this as we were prepping for this conversation, but I wanted to talk about like anger as an addiction. Um, and I don't know if that's a thing, so I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I have met people, and quite frankly, let me just be vulnerable for a second. I have met people that kind of reflected this in me, where I have been in a situation where I have felt wronged, or some crazy thing happened, and so I want to retell that situation, and I retell it over and over and over and over again. And I justify that in that I'm processing or I'm reflecting or something. But really, I feel like there is some sort of biochemical thing that happens in my brain if I do that, that almost I don't know what it is, because it's not like please give me sympathy. It's almost like retelling that and having all of those, it puts you right back in that same space again. And retelling that situation almost feeds, like, it feels good. It feels good to, like, just be angry about that. And I did that for years and years and years until I met people in my life that also did that. And it didn't feel good. You know what I mean? Like, being on the other side of that was really yucky. And so I've worked really hard at not rehashing those things and figuring out how to reflect on those more personally, and work through that. But I just wondered, is that like, I mean, is that a thing? Can anger be an addiction where it just festers and grows and builds like that?
I think the short answer is yes, because there are physiological actions that occur. There's neurochemical changes as well as hormonal changes that occur when we revisit, think about anger or situations. So we could have that biochemical charge that comes with an adrenaline rush, a sense of uh, albeit maybe unhealthy energy, but an energy that comes with that. I'd say fuel the fury. Maybe you
Mhm.
fuel the fury and you feel charged, whether that's adrenaline or other neurological processes that occur. Without a doubt, I would say there's a potential that could occur, but it's complicated because we also have those um, human cognitive, sociocultural factors that play a role as well. And I think there's probably some hidden desensitization that occurs. And again, depending on the space and the energy that the person who's experienced it has, some of these might fit. Maybe for you or for anyone who might be listening, is things like um, if I repeat this story, I can have a sense of control over it.
Mm.
I can have a sense of, in my brain, really believing that's exactly how it went down. I can strengthen and empower my distorted or accurate belief system. I can get people on my side. If I tell my story, and it's not necessarily with full intention to do those things. It may be quote unquote subconscious, but if I tell my story and they agree, it makes me feel powerful, or it makes me feel a bit
Justified.
justified. That's a great word. Um, Likewise, you could also, it can help to serve to de-escalate it. If I tell my story enough and I get enough justification, or I get enough people that are going and agreeing with me or giving me okayness to have those emotions, not only could it work us up, at some point it might de-escalate us also,
Mm.
because I don't really need to act on this because I am okay. And I can get energy from that part of me that says, I'm going to turn the other cheek, or I'm going to be above this. I'm not going to give this such and such, so and so, the energy to be so angry about this anymore. May have been projecting a little there too, but
I've
depending
been
on certain circumstances.
I've been projecting this whole conversation. So go ahead and project. And I just want to make sure, because Jamie, you brought up and took us someplace where I had on my list too, and we started touching on it with that last comment that you had, Krista, which is diffusing anger, right? Like, there's a lot of things, and I'm not going to be able to speak very intelligently here because I'm just going to fumble over my words. So my point comes across. But in my own personal life, there's things that I recognize within myself that I want to stop the anger from bubbling to the point of, I'll say, no return, right? Like, where you're just like, I'm angry. Now my actions are reflecting I'm angry. My attitude's angry. Like, you know what I mean? And now I'm impacting the people around me. Um, and so I've always wanted to stop and think, okay, and for me, when I get to anger, I can't even say that I'm not thinking clearly. It's almost like my brain shuts off and it becomes just a action at that point, right? Like, I am somehow pre-wired, almost robotic, in the fact that now I'm angry and these things are going to happen until that anger subsides. I'm almost like held captive, right? Like, I'm not even making sense anymore. But so it made me want to stop and say, well, how do you recognize that as I'm building up, And again, I know the answer to this is it depends, because everyone's different. But generally speaking, is there a way that you can maybe diffuse that for yourself? And this is the dangerous part of the question, because I firmly believe that I am not responsible for other people's emotions and how they feel. So if other people are angry, I don't want to say, how can you diffuse the other people? Because sometimes that has a negative connotation, like you are responsible for making that person angry, and it's not always the case. But it still makes me want to ask the question, when you're diffusing anger, even amongst yourself, or even if you start recognizing anger in someone else, I'm going to ask you, is there a professional thing, a clinical thing, something we can practice or do that would help maybe diffuse some of those feelings, so we don't get to that point that I just described where I'm just reacting, I'm not even thinking anymore?
Typically, when we are, say, working on anger management, we're going to try to address some of these things because we want, obviously, an ounce of prevention is worth a world of cure, right? We want to help and assist people to recognize it earlier. This is one of the ways that I think the videotaping also can come into play. If you record yourself when you have strong emotions, whether it's anger or not, whatever the strong emotion is, you can become more aware of what that looks like as it presents itself, but physiological changes. So some people will start experiencing like warmth in their chest or in their face, or maybe they are starting to recognize their body language tightening their fists, or that their eyebrows twitch. What are some of the physiological things? Does your stomach kind of get a pit? And, what are some of the physiological and maybe nonverbal, kinds of signs in your body, and just becoming very aware of that? Or, if you're with somebody that you trust, after the fact, when you're processing the anger episode, for you to say, tell me what you observed as this process happened. As this started to unfold, what did you see in me? And then you can use that to prompt some self-reflection, but also you can have awareness of what other people saw. So you can reflect back and say, yeah, my face does get red, or I do feel flush, or I do grind my teeth. I do catch that my jaw is tight, whatever those early signs are. So you start becoming aware of your individual stuff. And so there's no it depends on that one, because it's really about your trends and what you typically will do. And of course, there is it depends on, like, is it a spontaneous situation or is it more of a build-up type of a situation? And it might present itself differently. But try to catch those early physiological individual experiences. What words do you typically say? Are there any particular activating words or situations? We sometimes call them triggers. Sometimes triggers, that term triggers people. And so we've moved towards like activating kinds of things. What kinds of things activate that anger? So if you're very self-aware, what situations, what circumstances, who, what words, what language, what are the things that can take me there? And you reflect back on that so you can kind of be prepared. Again, that's almost like that pre-playing I talked about before. Through your introspection and your reflection, you determine, oh, yeah, if I hear that word, I'm going to have to, I'm not going to choose any hot topics to throw out there, but we all have certain activating events or words or even scents that might, at a conscious or unconscious level, send us, right? So those activating events. And so you become more and more aware of of those activating situations, and circumstances. Recognize what your reactions are, like, and what the consequences are. So as you do that, it's really like a combination of all the above. As you reflect and you consistently focus on, when I get angry, this is what typically happens. I get my way, so I'm going to continue to do it, dang it, right?
No, right. Right.
Or with this person, I get my way and I can manipulate the heck out of them. Or maybe it's like it really damages them. I can see the hurt in them. I feel like I've damaged my relationship with them, or I believe that I'm seen as I'm losing respect. So you reflect after those circumstances, you reflect back on what the consequences are. And then you go back and you replay the situation in your brain, whether that's visually or journaling about it. But so I think by reflecting, you can grow and alter that future so you can learn to de-escalate or prevent those larger episodes of anger. Long explanation, but I think that's really, those are some strong ideas. There's obviously, it's not all inclusive, but I think those are some strong ideas that we really try to promote when we talk about anger management. And that's really all parts of mood regulation or emotional regulation, is becoming much more self-aware. Obviously, breathing and controlling those organs that you have with you all the time. If you can learn to manage your brain, you learn to manage your lungs, other things will fall in place and you'll start having much more ability to have mood regulation. The other key word, or a key thing that I think many people find helpful, including myself, when really difficult situations occur, and I've recently had the opportunity to remind myself, is it'll be okay.
Yeah.
When hasn't it been okay? I also use a phrase that can be probably controversial. I say, nobody died. And I get it back in perspective. So part of it is I do that reflectively and afterwards, but also early on when I catch myself, tightening my jaw or gritting my teeth, then I will be like, this is not worth your integrity. Don't give this energy to. So you develop these canned phrases along with those early identification factors.
Yeah.
That's a
You
really good
know,
point.
you touched on something just a tiny bit in there that I have to admit is part of why I was excited to talk about this, because, and I don't know, maybe it's anecdotal, maybe it's just who I surround myself with, I'm not sure, but I feel like temperatures are just so much higher. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, and I noticed it first during like 2020, like when supply chains were rough or whatever, like people were just very angry about that, and it feels like that has never really come back down. Like there is just um if service at a restaurant isn't up to expectations, people are just like upset about that, and you know what I mean? um and with each other, I feel like that it's just we're at a boiling point, it feels like. And I don't know if that is, like I said, maybe it's just the world that I'm living in, and maybe I'm just hypersensitive to it. This is also possible. Um, but I wondered if you could talk a little bit about those kind of spaces, not just like if I'm in that space and I'm jumping off the cliff of anger at the waitress for not bringing my water, but also, like, what do you do when you're seeing that, or when you're with someone who is in that space? How can you support another person as we're because I just feel like temperatures are high right now.
I would agree in terms of like that observation that temperatures are high and there's a lot of unresolved uh, situations, from the political climate to medical questions to um, life circumstances, and adopting different expectations of ourselves in our daily lives, all the things that we all on a daily basis do. I think it's pretty complex, but from a behavioral perspective, is we've all developed, or many of us, probably all would be fairly safe to say, associations. So maybe some people's began at early childhood trauma, and then COVID just exacerbated a lot of those kinds of things. Say at baseline, someone who has a trauma, then the experience of COVID and all that it entailed probably created some stronger connections to some of the maybe more negatively balanced emotions and experiences. And those just got confounded and exacerbated and got stronger as people evolved to now, and all those events, life events that have occurred. The the dichotomy of our world, and the maybe inflexibility of being able to be okay with other people's views and opinions. And there's just so many trends right now that I think we could point to that become problematic, and the changes in maybe some generational changes. As I don't know, as a teacher, I see it all the time in terms of the major generational differences. all those things I think play a role in it. Say that person then that maybe didn't have early trauma or already has stuff going on. The person who's like, life is great. And then COVID hits, then that some certain associations and the unsteadiness of what that time frame brought and the lack of a sense of control. What is the key factor? Some of the key factors in anxiety, depression, fear, a lack of a sense of control. And we had that on so many planes, so many levels during the COVID timeframes. And then those become associated with either previous or other life events. And then as I call it the COVID hangover, I see a lot of really positive trends in my world and like in the academic world in terms of my students. I can see people are starting to be a little more tolerant. Again, I think, this is all anecdotal. And so I think there's some positive trends that I'm starting to experience. And as there are fewer episodes of staffing shortages, then that will also serve to decrease the immediate associations with COVID and lack of staffing, all those kinds of things, all those complexities. I think we've developed some associations and a lack of a sense of control. And some people tolerate that more, some don't. And if you stop and introspect, even on just that little rant that I went on to, I think if you stop and reflect, you can start to, for yourself, recognize how your actions and reactions now are impacted from previous life events. And we all had that same common, though it varies in many ways, of that COVID experience. We also had a lot of commonalities in that. But if we never take time to reflect on it, we're not going to grow from it or get stronger.
Right.
The second part of that, if we're with individuals who are still or are reactive and those kinds of things, again, it does depend. It depends on your relationship with that individual. Depends on the setting and what is the cost. What is the cost if you do or don't intervene, in those particular situations, and what is that relationship and where is your power in that? If I'm a supervisor to students and I'm in a setting and they start acting up, definitely licensed to speak up, or if it's my kids being idiots. But I also am going to measure how is this going to impact it? Cost benefit, so many things, cost benefit analysis of those particular situations. If there's anything you want me to expand upon with that part, let me know.
Well, it's ironic because I said, COVID, but my mother was very much that person. She was so reactive when she felt the least bit slightest in, different spaces. And I remember being super embarrassed at at a restaurant or at the grocery store when she would start making little comments and stuff. And obviously I had no space to be like, Mom, stop it, because I was little. But I know I just know I see that so often when I'm out and about in lots of different spaces and in lots of different ways. And I just wish, and maybe this is me just wishful thinking, I just wish there was a way that, I could contribute to bringing that temperature down, because I do. It just is. And it's not just in those service settings. I feel like it's really lots of different spaces where those activating factors just come up all the time. And I don't know if it's because we're not dealing with our crap personally enough as a whole or what, but
Well, if I can kind of add to that, Jamie,
yeah.
when I heard you and Krista talking, the phrase that popped into my mind is displaced anger, right? Like I don't hear a lot of people talking about that, or even realizing that exists, right? Because let's go back to the last 8 years from even just the political space, right? Like you and I, Jamie, we've been close friends for decades, and yet we will fight with one another. Why? Because of things that are people from a political party that we voted for, we almost take on or put blame. I'm going to say this as a general statement. I'm guilty of this. I don't know if either one of you are, of our listeners are, but I'm assuming I'm not the only person in the world who's experienced this. But I have sometimes have displaced anger where I'll put the anger that I have, and I'm just going to stay in the political space, of a certain political person that I didn't vote for, but I know somebody else did, suddenly I'm now projecting that anger on the person who voted for them as if that person did the same actions that the actual person who did it is making me feel these emotions. And I don't know if that's because it's easily accessible, because I'm never going to be able to talk to the president of the United States, although we had a candidate just this last season.
We did.
We did. So we're getting closer. But, you know, that's kind of what popped into my mind is I'm like, well, it sounds like displaced anger a little bit. Like I'm now mad at not you, Jamie, or anybody else. Like, but I'm mad at this political person that I didn't vote for, and yet I have the opportunity to show you my frustration and show you my anger. And I think if, as a society, you know, you ask the question, I think I'm going to answer it the best I can. I think one step towards that, and I don't think it's all or nothing, but one step is I think we all can maybe take a moment to say, I'm mad about something, but I should be mad at the people who didn't do the actions, right? Like, because you cast a vote, because you went to the restaurant, because you did whatever it is, doesn't mean that the anger you're feeling can then or should be displaced onto somebody else. I feel like I'm ranting now and I'm kind of losing my train of thought, but I hope I came across clear enough. Like, I think displaced anger is really something that we should all be kind of reminding ourselves. Are you angry at the person you're talking to? Or are you angry about the situation? Or are you angry about somebody else that wronged you and you just happen to be taking it out on somebody else next to you? I'll pause there.
I think that's a really good point. And I liken the displaced anger as like an extension of associations. Like we're angry about one thing and that's associated with somebody or something else. And so we displace the anger onto those circumstances. I think the idea, I mean, there's a lot of potential explanations, but I think the notion of a sense of control. We may not have access as that source, so we can have a sense of control and we can maybe feel heard. Sometimes it just is because we feel an absolute lack of a sense of control. Sometimes it's personality. Also a sense of that if this person hears me loudly enough, somehow that will change their behavior, you know? And, obviously that's not so helpful and it's pretty unrealistic. And that destroys relationships. And maybe that's part of just one of my major concerns is in this whole dynamic of, say, displaced anger or these associations, we're building strategies or trends are developing that it's going to be very difficult to take away those barriers. If we continue to displace the anger, if we continue to find fault in anybody that doesn't agree with what we do, or that's all or none, because I might like certain policies of this person and might really not like some of them. But if I'm comparing this to this, we all have different priorities. If I'm going to get angry at, say, a political figure, or not, is it really, it's just not that black and white because there's so many factors that play a role in it. And I think it's also part of that displaced anger piece that introspection, reflection would be the way to not displace anger. That said, how many people even think about or able to reflect on or recognize, oh, I just took that out on so-and-so. And again, then to admit it, you're dealing with the V word, vulnerability.
Right.
And, the people that hopefully are listening can say, oh, yeah, I fall into that category sometimes, but I'm willing to grow. And that's one of the reasons I'm listening to podcasts, right? Unfortunately, there's so many people that are not reached with or even have access to the resources to be able to develop and grow in those ways, along with those individuals who have resistance to do so. Maybe we've talked about some of that narcissistic component of people who know everything already. And so why would you even consider that? Yeah. But complex. But I like that point.
I think another piece of that too, what's something else that I have noticed is I feel like just on a level, we don't make the space to be intentional about reflection and personal growth and things like that. I feel like we have so much coming at us all the time that there is a 24/7 news feed. There's a 24/7 I mean, Netflix is constantly going in the background for me, even in a headphone. It could be 3 rooms away, but just to have noise going on in my head all the time is, I think so much of us live our lives that way because it's so accessible. Um, that I wonder too if that's probably a piece of it also. And I'm encouraged because I do feel like younger people are recognizing that and they're disconnecting a little bit. And so I've been encouraged by that. But I do think that we probably just run on a constant 24-hour loop, you know?
Well, and everything's accessible, like you said, but also the word that jumped to my mind when you said that is avoidance, right? Like I can avoid a lot of things by just keeping myself busy. I don't
Shut
have to
up.
deal. Yeah, exactly. Like I don't have to deal with anything because I'll just keep my mind going and I can avoid the things that I need. It's almost like, you have to clean your house. Well, if I'm too busy doing all these other things and making my calendar full, going to parties and meeting people, blah, blah, my house just keeps getting dirtier and dirtier and dirtier until I actually stop and make time
Mhm.
to say, okay, I'm going to clean it. And when you said that, because I'm guilty of that too, right? Like I can have a podcast going, I could be working away, I can have the TV on, I have all these things. And the one thing that jumped to my mind is, but what am I avoiding? Because why am I so afraid of just quiet? Why am I afraid of just being able to think? And I've had to ask myself that a couple different times.
Well, and unfortunately, I've gotten to a space where I almost need background noise to focus on what I'm focusing on because if there's not enough going on, it's difficult for me to focus. So I do wonder if that's a big piece of rising temperatures because we're not taking the intentional time to take care of ourselves in this space too.
So I think based upon what you both said, I think it's really fair to say you're both just kind of crazy. So we'll just put that out there. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Times 2.
Just
Well, this is the last time we're going to have you on our podcast. It was so great to see you, though. No kidding. Totally kidding.
And that's totally just joking. But everything you've described is so normal. It's
Mhm.
so typical. And there are definitely pieces of the puzzle. I think the ability to, again, think on this level and to reflect everything we've done today is reflecting. I think that's really what we need to manage and understand anger, to understand and manage other emotions, and to be able to move beyond some of the displaced anger, to move beyond just going through the motions. Specific to what you just described with toxic busyness, there's actually kind of a phrase now
There's a
I
word
like
for
where
that.
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just keep yourself busy so you don't have to deal with things. See a lot with like some of the extremes of individuals, say, who have PTSD that they may not even start demonstrating their symptoms to the point where it appears and others see it, to a point that it's diagnosable until years, several years, maybe even decades post combat experience or other experience, because that's when they're retiring. That's when their body's not able to, or their mind's not able to stay so busy. So then that lack of being busy, lack of noise, which became their go-to, the alcoholic or the workaholic, whatever, that when that noise is not present, that inner world becomes so uncomfortable, then those symptoms present themselves. Of course, that's not everybody who's been in the military or experienced trauma, but in some cases, that might be pretty common, that
Mhm.
when it gets quiet, you avoid the quiet because then all the other stuff rushes in.
Yeah.
Unless extreme kind of situations, just in general. I mean, I clean to avoid creating my syllabi or to do my case notes or whatever, right? So, without a doubt, procrastination, the P word, and those kinds of things are also built into this avoidance piece. Again, that's a little off from the anger, but I think we can talk about that in terms of about any emotion. And sometimes our responses are about um, covering up or avoiding, and sometimes that response is anger.
So now that we've covered the V word and the P word, um, just to wrap us up a little bit, I guess I think the M word for me was really motivator. Like, what is it when I could figure out what it was that was driving those feelings and my my frustration came in not being able to respond to them effectively. The anger is normal. It's cool to feel the anger. Sometimes you need to feel the anger. So it's not the emotion that's bad. It was always what I did with it. It was always the people that I could hurt with it, or the relationships I could damage with it. And so for me, when I was able to stop and figure out what it was that was driving that, then it was easier for me to deal with it, because then I could be preemptive, I could be proactive, and even when I felt it, when I was supposed to feel it because it was appropriate, it didn't get the best of me. Like, it wasn't controlling me. I could feel it, accept it, and not fight it, but also not spew it out all over other people. So, um, yeah, this has been a really good conversation. I've really appreciated this. And although Mahlon says you can't come back, maybe if he's sick one day, you can just come back that day because he doesn't want to be vulnerable anymore or something. I don't know what that's about. But
Well, obviously, Jamie doesn't get sarcasm. We'll spell it out next time for you. This is a sarcastic comment.
oh, that's so
I do
rude.
actually, though. I know you're trying to wrap us up, Jamie, but I do have one more question that I wanted to ask, and I didn't know when the right time was to ask it. And I'm trying to make this sound. I don't live in your world, Krista. I don't pretend to, but I want to try to ask questions that fit into your world. So this question is one that's me trying. And maybe I should have asked this at the beginning, but I'm just curious because we've talked about a lot of great things, but the one thing that I still it's the itch that I'm trying to scratch around anger is when I'm angry, but then I lash out at other people because I'm angry about something internally. So here's my question, and maybe we've touched on it enough that you're like, "Hey, there's nothing new I'd like to add." But I'm just going to ask you my question. And that is, how can, in your professional opinion, as high level as possible, because I'm sure this is a very, probably spider web out, but how can unexpressed anger towards oneself show up as anger towards others? Because I know I have that.
I think that's complex. We seem to be pre-wired to make meaning of things. We seem to be pre-wired to feel better if we express, if we exhale. Some people feel better if they can have a sense of control. I think all those could be potential reasons that people will project out and take their anger out, lash out. I think we talked about the C word a lot, control. So whether it's, again, at a very conscious level or a subconscious level, there's a sense of control if we're able to lash out, even if it's not the correct source. And sometimes we're aware of it, many times we're not. But it does give us still a sense of some control or power, possibly. Also, it just gives us that release, because we do tend to need a release. And if we don't know what the source is, say we don't have the skills or the cognitive ability, or we feel too vulnerable to introspect, or to become more self-aware, then rather than literally physically get ill, or become very depressed because that anger is not expressed, then then it's like potential explanations why we would lash out, to kind of just express it, because we need it out of us. Because we know also internalized anger can lead to mental health concerns. It also can lead to autoimmune disorders, heart conditions, physical illness, literally, migraines, a lot of pain disorders are really unexpressed anger. And if a person doesn't have either the skills or the ability or awareness, then acting out that anger can be a means to at least do so. Not, again, necessarily on a conscious level. Another quick twist I think that might twist into this a little bit is a notion that some of our anger develops because we are angry at ourselves for feeling the emotion that's forbidden. So if I'm feeling sad about something, maybe I get angry at myself for feeling sad about something I don't want to feel sad about. I know that throws another whole twist in all of our conversations and the whole notion of anger. But I think at a deep level, it really could speak a little bit why we act it out, because then there is an expression. It also speaks possibly one explanation for why we act angry and we lash out at people when there's truly a different emotion, because we become angry at ourselves because we're having an emotion we don't want to have or that is uncomfortable.
I agree with that. Fun. I
Yuck.
think this is a fun
Thanks.
question. I think this is a fun question to end. This is going to end it for me, personally. But do you think anger is an emotion that is contagious?
Without a doubt. If we get virtually any emotion can be contagious. And if we're, especially those emotions that we didn't go too deeply into it, but those emotions that are invigorating, or that give us an irrational or a rational sense of power, or possibly true power, or we can be joined into that false sense of power or true power, then it can become contagious, probably at a physiological level, as well as just that whole notion of groupthink. You
I
know,
was,
you get that ball rolling, and it is hard to stop that monster, and it really does become a disaster
I was gonna
pretty
say,
quickly.
think about workplaces. You know what I mean? I mean, you can see how that can just snowball quickly. If you've got a lot of positivity and you've got some positive leaders, the whole team can be super positive. But one little seed of negativity can really start a forest fire in an organization like that.
Well, and that's exactly where you're going, Jamie, is what made me ask that question because you hear it all the time. One bad apple ruins the bunch. And then I've heard that, there's been studies where you have somebody that comes into a group that's, they're maybe lighthearted, they're working together, everything's fine. And this one person, and they are meant to be this, is really negative or angry. And before long, everybody's sharing that same emotion. And then when they were asked, they're like, "Why are you so angry?" They're like, I don't really know. Like it's
Right.
almost like, which made me go to the point of like, can you actually become angry because somebody else is angry when you have no reason to be angry? That was fascinating for me. So I just wanted to end on that lighthearted question to say, do you think it's contagious?
A disturbance in the force, for sure.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, I think that is a fun place to end. I think it's also very can leave people with the space to kind of grow from that thought, and how our emotions and developing an emotional IQ and ability to develop emotional regulation can really benefit us all, because it would give us the opportunity to see where others and we fall on that spectrum of if we are just feeding into somebody else's emotions, or if we really, what we're truly experiencing, whether it's anger or a different emotion, becoming more self-aware.
The only buzzword we didn't use today was empathy. So I guess we'll have to put a pin in it and save that for another day, right, man?
Okay. So since Jamie brought that up, and I'm getting more, did you know? I've already told this to Jamie, so I'm going to just share it with you, Krista. So I've recently started a new job, and the job that I'm in IT, and I've never heard this before. But have you ever heard of oh, now empathetic data? Have you ever heard of that?
I think I have. Is it in the context of like people's interpretation of data, or is it that data becomes consistent with the s- the
I am
circumstances?
Yeah, I am not an expert in this, but from my understanding, which blew my mind, because I fight Jamie about empathy all the time. I'm like, whatever, it's stupid.
He does
I'm
constantly.
getting better, but I'm like, it's not that important. Um, no, it is this company, which is, I think it's revolutionary. Like I'm sitting here, my mind's blown, but I'm wondering if this is more industry standards. But they're looking at actual data they can collect from their customers, from their participants, from whoever they're interacting with, and then they can actually use that data to have a more empathetic conversation with members, customers, clients, team members, whoever it is. They have a better sense of where they're at emotionally from the actual data that they are collecting. So they're almost inferring a little bit of that empathetic result based off of the data. I find that fascinating because, again, in my mind, datas are ones and zeros, black and white. There are no emotions. It's either there or it's not. and to be able to use it to fine tune and maybe get a bigger understanding of the people you're interacting with, even at that level, my mind was absolutely blown.
The way you described it, if I'm understanding you correctly, totally makes sense. Think of how starved we are as a society for individual attention, for people to listen to us. So if I do my research and I know 3 key points about you, that's not X's and O's, but even if it was, if then it's just bullet points of facts, and I can speak to that with any sense of concern or interest in you, I'm persuading you. And so like I'm interpreting it that way because if we show people empathy, or we can have a commonality and it's interpreted as empathy in any way, shape, or form. That seems like a stretch for that word, for empathy in this framework, but then it totally makes sense that it would occur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're starved.
I just, in a way for companies to start understanding, how do I connect with even my customers using some of that information? Because the way that I am understanding this is somebody calls in and let's just say their house was destroyed in a tornado. Ones and zeros, yeah, they matter, but that's not all that matters. Being able to take from the context of what that means and be able to apply some empathy to the conversation, now you have a customer for life, right? Now you have someone on the other side of the phone that cares about you. To your point, right? Like now I feel like I'm not just a check that I send into you every month. Now there is a relationship because you are being able to show me some of that emotional connection from something that was just ones and zeros before. Again, it just blows my mind. Just absolutely blows my mind.
It is powerful. It's interesting that blows your mind, because in my world, that's like, duh. I mean, because reality is we have data all over the place that shows if you can just create a connection, whether it's be as a teacher, a physician, a therapist, a coach, if you can get people to like you, if they can think that you have genuine concern for them, you're going to have, like you said, a return customer. You're going to have that person's going to have a sense of connection and feel that because you have that connection, they're going to potentially interpret it as empathy and that you care. And then you know, that's what matters in most of the hats that I wear, at least. And research supports that.
And probably something that really has been lost if you think about the way growth has happened in like corporations and things like that. You used to have that when you walked down the street and bought your health insurance from Bob on the corner, who your parents knew and your grandparents knew, you know what I mean? And that's changed a lot. So I suppose that's probably just a response to what we're missing from not being able to do business with people we used to know for generations.
We should put that on the list, Jamie, because I think that would be a perfect collaboration for us, because it's bringing both sides of the world together. Because honestly, I'm like, how can you even fathom emotional spectrum off of ones and zeros? And that's what blows my mind, is that you can take these data points, and from it you can pull out a variety of things. Some of them not very, quantitative, right? Like I can't say how someone's feeling all the time, but if you look at the data, you might be able to start, reading between the lines or seeing trends. Emotional trends is also another thing that just makes me go, what are you talking about? How do you trend that?
You know what, though? You have to be really careful because it's easy to manufacture, too. So then people have a false sense of someone on the other end gives a crap about me, and they really don't. But we are going to end up with 2 episodes in one if we're not careful. So I think we should
You're right.
probably...
Let's just keep going.
Your bonus content is attached to the original. Here we go.
Here's episodes 1 through 7 for you. Enjoy.
Hope you're ready. Settle in.
Interesting.
Anyways,
thank
you, Krista, for coming in.
Thanks again for coming. We always appreciate having you on and hope you'll join us again soon.
This is wonderful. I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully the listeners can get some, gems or some good takeaways. And at the very least, just be self-aware, find a means to reflect, and it's definitely going to most likely have a positive benefit. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Roundtable Mindset. We hope you've enjoyed our conversation, and we've got many more to come this season. So stay tuned. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.